When you hear the name Einstein, what comes to mind? Probably wild hair, maybe the equation E equals mc squared, right? But what if I told you the real story, the one that changed everything? Doesn't start in some prestigious university, but at a boring old clerk's desk. Yeah, today we're going to peel back the layers of the myth and find the real Albert Einstein.
You know, that line, it was actually said by Charlie Chaplin to Einstein at a movie premiere. And it just perfectly sums up the bizarre kind of fame Einstein had, right? He was this massive celebrity, but for ideas that were so out there, so revolutionary that almost nobody could actually wrap their head around them. He became this global icon, even though his work was a complete mystery to pretty much everyone.
So let's do exactly that. Let's push past the t-shirts and the quirky photos and try to find the actual person behind it all. And our journey, well, it starts way before he was a household name, in a place you would absolutely never guess.
Okay, so like I said, this story doesn't kick off in some fancy lecture hall filled with applause. Nope. It starts right here, in a pretty quiet government office in Bern, Switzerland. This is where a young Albert Einstein worked, as a patent clerk.
Yeah, you heard that right. The guy who was about to completely redefine our understanding of the universe couldn't even land a teaching job for 2 whole years after he graduated. So, what'd he do? He took a job as a patent clerk. His entire day was spent looking over other people's inventions. And this is where the story gets really, really interesting. You would think this job was just a distraction, right? A way to pay the bills. But it was the exact opposite. It was a catalyst. He spent all day, every day, analyzing these super practical problems, especially inventions dealing with how to send signals and how to synchronize clocks. Just think about that for a second. The core ideas of relativity, they weren't born in some abstract ivory tower. They came from him thinking about the nuts and bolts of everyday gadgets.
So where did all that thinking lead? Well, while he was still working his 9 to 5 at the patent office, Einstein had this unbelievable creative explosion, all in his spare time. We're talking about a single year that would completely rewrite the rulebook of physics. It's so famous now, it has a name, his Annus Mirabilis, or the Miracle Year.
I mean, just look at this. It's insane. In just 1 year, this 26-year-old patent clerk, on the side, remember, published 4 papers that basically became the pillars of modern physics. He proved atoms were real, he figured out the fundamental nature of light, and oh yeah, he gave us the most famous equation in history, E equals mc squared. And he did it all in his spare time. It's just mind-blowing. And believe it or not, he was just warming up. The Miracle Year, that was all about space, time, and energy. But his next target, it was even bigger. He decided to take on gravity itself, a force that, for more than 200 years, everyone thought Isaac Newton had already figured out. Okay, so for centuries, Newton's idea was king. Gravity is like this invisible force, a rope pulling things together. But Einstein's idea, it was something else entirely. He said, no, no, no. He proposed that huge objects, like our sun, don't pull things. They literally bend and warp the very fabric of space-time around them. The classic analogy, and it's a good one, is a bowling ball sitting on a trampoline. So here's the key takeaway, the really big shift in thinking. The Earth isn't being pulled by the sun. It's actually just moving in the straightest possible line through a universe that has been curved by the sun's massive weight. It's constantly falling into that curve, but because it's also moving sideways so fast, it just keeps missing. It's falling, but it never hits. And this is the moment he went from genius physicist to global superstar. A British scientist, Sir Arthur Eddington, led an expedition to watch a solar eclipse. And what they saw was incredible. Starlight was actually bending as it passed the sun, exactly like Einstein's math said it would. The next day, a newspaper headline screamed, "Revolution in Science, New Theory of the Universe, Newtonian Ideas Overthrown." Just like that, Albert Einstein became an overnight worldwide sensation. But you know, with that kind of crazy, unprecedented fame comes a massive platform. And as the world started getting darker with the rise of fascism in Europe, Einstein absolutely refused to just sit back and stay silent. He made a choice. He transformed from being just a theoretical physicist into something more, a moral conscience for the entire world. Get this, he was actually visiting America when Hitler came to power in Germany. He saw what was happening, and he never went back. The Nazis burned his books, they seized his property, and they even put a bounty on his head. Suddenly, Albert Einstein, maybe the smartest person on the planet, was a man without a country, a stateless refugee. So he settles in America, but he arrives in a country that's deeply segregated. And he immediately saw the ugly parallels between that and the persecution he had just escaped in Germany. He didn't just notice it, he spoke out. He became this really vocal champion for civil rights. He joined the NAACP, and in one really telling story, when the famous black singer Marian Anderson was refused a room at a Princeton hotel because of her race, Einstein just opened his home to her. That's the kind of man he was. And this brings us to what was probably the biggest moral dilemma of his entire life. See, Einstein was a lifelong, committed pacifist. He hated war, but he was terrified that the Nazis might be the first to build an atomic bomb. So against his own principles, he signed a letter to President Roosevelt that basically set the Manhattan Project in motion. Of course, after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he was just haunted by his role in it. He called that signature the one great mistake of his life. And that complexity, right? The pacifist who helps create the atomic bomb, that wasn't an isolated thing. It really extended to every single part of his life. His personal views, his politics, his philosophy, they were all just as complex and, frankly, as surprising as his scientific theories. His thinking just constantly pushed against the status quo. He didn't believe in a personal God who answered prayers. For him, God was in the incredible, beautiful harmony of the universe itself. He was also a passionate socialist, writing essays that were very critical of capitalism. And on Zionism, while he supported the idea of a cultural home for Jewish people, he was deeply suspicious of nationalism. So suspicious, in fact, that when he was offered the presidency of Israel, he turned it down. He just wasn't a fan of states and borders. So when you boil it all down, that simple caricature we have of him, the quirky, absent-minded professor with crazy hair, it barely even scratches the surface. The real Albert Einstein was this incredibly complex person, driven by two powerful forces, this deep, childlike wonder about how the universe worked, and an equally deep sense of responsibility for the people living in it. In the end, Einstein's life isn't just a story about science. It's so much more. It's a story that forces us, all of us, to ask a really tough question, one that's maybe more relevant today than ever before. What is the true responsibility of a scientist, of any knowledgeable person really, in a world that's so full of politics and inequality and war?